the Raptors are out here making some decisions on actual roster players, as apparently Jeff Dowtin Jr. is in and Dalano Banton's out, at least when it comes to extending qualifying offers. So we'll break down what that means for this roster going forward into next season. Additionally, something devastating might happen this summer as Jakob Poeltl, after we gave up a first-round pick, a couple seconds, and a first-round pick that could be in the lottery next season, to bring him in at this year's trade deadline. He could be going back to the San Antonio Spurs, according to Michael Grange. So we'll discuss that, what contract the Raptors are looking to give Fred VanVleet, and some more juicy Nick Nurse drama, Riker. So lots of stuff to break down. So let's dive into the first topic of discussion. And Jeff Dowtin is apparently in and Dalano Banton's out. So the backup point guard position and maybe potentially the starting point guard position, depending on what happens to Fred VanVleet tomorrow night. But basically, news came out from Blake Murphy. The Toronto Raptors have extended qualifying offers to Jeff Dowtin Jr. and Ron Harper, so they become restricted free agents for the Toronto Raptors. So we essentially control their rights. They're on two ways, and Blake Murphy indicated that Jeff Dowtin Jr. is likely going to get a real deal with the squad, and Harper's going to compete in the summer. But the real interesting thing here, Riker, that has a lot of people fired up, because Nick Nurse didn't play him enough to develop. He's just oozing with potential, but Dalano Banton, he did not get his qualifying offer extended. He is now an unrestricted free agent. It doesn't guarantee he's off the team, but you'd figure if the Toronto Raptors wanted to keep his sort of future rights, ensure that he's back, he would have had his qualifying offer extended there. What are your thoughts on all this stuff happening? Because I'm a big Jeff Dowtin Jr. guy, but Dalano definitely has a lot of potential.
Listen, I think you're tripping here saying that Jeff Dowtin, or what is his name? Dowtin, first name?
Jeff Dowtin Jr., baby.
Jeff Dowtin Jr. I mean, just the fact here that I don't even know the full name, if he was inserted into the starting lineup next season, would be shocking. I thought that the whole narrative was retool, not reset. So I'm hoping that there's another play here for a starting point guard position. But the fact is, Dalano Banton was pretty raw.
I don't even know his name.
I don't even know his name. That's science. That is true analytics right there. What I'm saying, measuring who's ready to get that starting point guard slot. But Ben, reality is Dalano Banton, very raw. Definitely not a three-point shooter. Probably still a couple years to develop. I think if the toolbox or the trajectory of the Raptors was that reset, this is probably a guy you'd want to keep around. If it's retool, you'd have to think that there's bigger aspirations, to use Goran Dragic's word, bigger aspirations for the Raptors with who they might claim to fill up their roster spots that are in that ball handling scoring position. And if nothing else happens, even if there's not another point guard you get in free agency, you'd maybe give the helm to Scotty Barnes to step up as that primary, Gary Trent Jr., maybe the primary point guard off the bench. I don't know, but I'm not shocked to see Dalano Banton not get re-picked up on that qualifying offer.
Well, Gary Trent Jr., I don't want to see him playing point guard. But are you saying Goran Dragic should be the next Raptors point guard?
No, I'm saying higher aspirations. I think that's a direct quote.
The higher aspirations, the Toronto Raptors definitely could. I see what you're saying there. Dalano Banton, in his limited run and his limited opportunities, 4 points per game, 5 points per game for the Toronto Raptors last year, 1.5 rebounds, 1.2 assists. 30% from the three-point line. The jumper definitely was improved last season, but still not a guy that you'd rely upon to break down zones, because teams would automatically go into a 2-3 when Dalano Banton would hit the floor, mess up the spacing, mess up what's happening out there rocking. But Jeff Dowtin Jr. is a guy that I am happy to see return, happy to see come back. And even though his numbers are technically worse, played less games than Dalano Banton, 2 points per game, 1 rebound, 1.2 assists, 43% from the field, 31% from the three-point line, and only 66% from free throws. Looking at the stats, they're a bit ugly. They're not that hot. They're not that great. But Jeff Dowtin Jr., the way he comes in, he controls the game. He is a prototypical point guard that is a leader out there on the court. He tells people where to go. He plays elite defense. He changes the game with his energy. I agree, starting would be a risk to come in and say, hey, Jeff Dowtin, come in as a two-way and throw you into the starting unit. But I'm very, very happy to see him back on the roster, even though he's a bit of an older rookie. Doesn't have the height, doesn't have the length of a Dalano, right? Is just a legitimate hooper. So I'm feeling Jeff Dowtin Jr. Even Ron Harper has some potential there, but I don't know. Do you want to see Dalano Banton brought back, yes or no, for next season? Or do you think they should just let him walk and let him develop elsewhere? Because we do have a new coach who apparently is big on development. He developed a lot of guys in Darko in Memphis. Got the most out of Desmond Bane, who was a late pick. Obviously, John Morant was a star coming in, but Jaren Jackson Jr., right? John Conchar, a lot of guys. Aldama, right? Lots of players on the Grizzlies became good. Do you think we should keep him around one more year with the new coaching staff?
Ben, free agency hasn't even started yet, and I'm already going to bring this up. My favorite thing, 8-man lineup. Let's develop the guys that have been starters for a while and haven't even reached their potential. Let's develop OG Anunoby to be a confident shot creator 100% of the time while he's out there. Let's get Scotty Barnes back to first season Scotty Barnes. So I don't need the 12th option, 13th option guy to have any emphasis on the development side. I'd say just rock with the guys that you need to get the most out of, the highest paid players. And I'm sure that there's a move in free agency to pick up an actual point guard.
Hey, an actual point guard is on this team. Jeff Dowtin Jr. Learn his name, sir. Comment section, go at. Learn this man's name. He's going to be going crazy next season. He's quiet and all the doubters, Jeff Dowtin Jr. But one guy that would certainly, or one move that would certainly do the opposite of quiet me, is if Jakob Poeltl returns to the San Antonio Spurs, because Michael Grange came out on a podcast today and basically indicated, Ryker, that the San Antonio Spurs, they have zero desire to play 7'3" Victor Wembanyama at the center position. They say, he's a 4, guys. So you know what we need to do? We need to come in and bring in a big center, a lumbering guy that plays defense, that gets rebounds, that can be a nice complement, a foil to Victor Wembanyama and everything he does out there. And you know who we should go after? We should go after the center of the team that we just continuously fleece. Thaddeus Young, hey, we'll take a first-round pick for him. Hey, Jakob Poeltl, who's an unrestricted free agent. Do you know what would be crazy? If we got a first-round pick, 2 second-round picks for him, send him to Toronto, and out of a little hint of revenge, let Jakob Poeltl get his redemption off being traded in 2019, he'll go to Toronto, and then 6 months later, turn his flight around, turn his, around, and go straight back to San Antonio to play with Victor Wembanyama. He dropped it on a podcast, but it infuriated me so much. We gave up a top 6 protected pick for Poeltl, and he might go back to the same team that we traded him for. We have to block the Spurs number. Greg Popovich, get him out of the phone, Ryker. That would be madness. That would be nonsense happening right there.
Tell me this, Ben. If you're Yak, you picking that up? Let me ask you this: $15 million is on the table from the Spurs. You get your starting position back. Your team still sucks, but you're playing with a potentially generational talent, and you're going to get the exact same minutes in a state that's always warm, with, I believe, pretty low state tax at like Texas. 6%. I don't know how that stacks up against the rest of America.
Come on, you CPA man.
I believe Texas is one of the lower ones in the States. Or would you take maybe $20 million from the Raptors, potentially slightly better team, potentially they might underachieve again this season? If you're Jakob Poeltl, what are you doing?
I'm staying out of principle for the mental health of every single Canadian.
With the loyalty to the team that dealt you in the first place.
We got him back. We pulled him back. We rescued him. We picked him up twice. He can't leave. That would be devastating. That I don't care. Out of principle, I don't care if Jakob Poeltl came in and was garbage. The fact that we gave up a first round pick, and he wasn't garbage by any means, but the fact that we gave up a first and 2 seconds to a team that already fleeced us the year prior. I don't know what I do. He's Jakob Poeltl for the mental health of all Canadians. Please return.
The Raptors need to bring him back too, in reality, not just because of the pain and suffering that would be inflicted upon Raptors Nation if they did lose this man to the Spurs specifically, but to any team, it would be a loss to lose Jakob Poeltl in free agency. I'd like to run it back with the same roster, minus Fred VanVleet, maybe see a little bit more from Scotty Barnes, OG, but to have a reliable center that's getting you 10 and 10 minimum nightly, that holds his own, that, what is bunnies, soft touch. soft touch. That's Jakob Poeltl. You need a guy like that on the roster, especially when you're matching up against the Embiids and all the other lumbering centers out there in the league. And yeah, his free throws suck, and you probably can't play him, especially against or late game, foul trouble, or go at him, hack a shack, small teams, pack him in switches. There's a lot of scenarios where Jakob Poeltl is JV-esque, but the touch, the rebounding, the strength on the low block, you got to keep him around, Ben.
You got to keep him around. And what is the average? 13 points, 9 rebounds, 2.7 assists. His facilitating is huge, but yeah, the 60% for free throws is tough. But if he leaves, I will be devastated. It will not be good for the Toronto Raptors here at this point. But let's just move on before I throw something at my camera. But the Raptors want Fred VanVleet back on a 3-year deal, Ryker. And this might be a topic that's more frustrating to some Raptors fans. People are not happy with Fred VanVleet right now, especially with the latest reports that he might be getting $42 million per year from the Houston Rockets. But we won't dive into that. But apparently the Toronto Raptors, they don't want to go the route of, maximum amount, giving him the max amount of money he's eligible for, in that $40 million per year range. But apparently, where the Rockets are only willing to offer those 2 years at that insane amount of money, the Raptors are willing to go a 3-year deal. 3-year deal for Fred. News has basically come out. I'm pulling up the wrong screenshots. Basically, Fred VanVleet is poised to draw significant interest from the Houston Rockets, who are unlikely to sign James Harden now, especially after all the news that came out today. He's either going to the Knicks or the Clippers. But with Houston prioritizing short-term deals for elevated salaries, there is a strong belief Fred VanVleet could garner $80+ million for, as Mark Stein basically put it. But the Raptors would prefer to do a 3-year deal closer to the $90 million to $100 million range, league sources have told Hoops Hype. Ryker, yes, it's not $40 million, but there's an extra year tacked on. Michael Grange also discussed that if he wants to be, the team really wants to be competitive with Houston, they have to go the $30 million plus per season and a 4-year contract to give Fred VanVleet more money, so he stays out of, as you said, a state that's warmer, has less taxes and all these types of things. That's the direction the Raptors want to go, at least 3 seasons. Would you be happy if Fred VanVleet returned on that type of contract?
No. You watched last season. Again, I'm basing this off of the previous couple of seasons where some of his weaknesses have really been put on display, particularly when the rest of the Raptors team hasn't been solid enough to bring out the best parts of Fred VanVleet's game. So with no other apparent shakeups in the Raptors roster, to lock yourself in to that salary position, to run it back 3 more years with Fred VanVleet at the helm, just doesn't make sense to me, unless you're saying that there's a move for OG or Siakam or something like that. No other change to the roster. Play it back when the Raptors have been on this decline, giving them Jalen Brunson money. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
More than Jalen Brunson money. That's a huge bag going to Fred VanVleet there. I don't know. It's the $30 million range. That's tough. Again, you don't want an asset to walk away from your squad for nothing. But again, the Raptors looked into Fred VanVleet's trade value at the deadline, and we couldn't even net Grayson Allen and a pick for Fred VanVleet. So it's unlikely that we'd get anything in return from him at this point anyways. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with Fred. He's still a good point guard. He's still a good player. So ideally, we get him on a reasonable deal, but it seems unlikely here at this point. But the final thing we're discussing in this video is the Nick Nurse drama. Keeps getting juicier, Ryker. Keeps coming out. Basically, there's a video dropped this morning indicating that the whole thick of it is that Nick Nurse, he's now stepped down from his commitment to coach Team Canada in the next Olympics. When he committed to that, even when he was fired, he said he'd remain on Team Canada's roster, all that sort of stuff. And then stepped down. News basically indicated that the Sixers, right, the media reports were that the Philadelphia 76ers were the team that basically said, hey, Nick Nurse, you got your job in Philadelphia, need to focus on that, stop doing this Team Canada shenanigans. And we all understood it. You can't blame Nick Nurse of his new employers telling him to stop doing this FIBA action. It is what it is. But then we also heard that players, they'd be more willing to return to Team Canada now that Nick Nurse is gone. Covered that in a whole video this morning. And it's getting juicier, as apparently the Sixers insist to me that they were prepared to support Nick Nurse if he wanted to continue coaching the Canadian men's national team. Nurse stunningly stepped down from this post relinquishing one of his dreams to coach in the Olympics to focus on his new job and settling in Philadelphia. In a statement released Wednesday, it was a difficult decision to step down. Was his, and he helped Team Canada find in its search to find an associate head coach in Jordi Fernandez to take over his replacement. But apparently it wasn't the Sixers, Ryker. Nurse just said, hey, I'm done with this. Blame it on Philadelphia, which is really weird because we would have understood it, I guess, at that point. Players want to come back with Nick Nurse. This man's reputation is really being dragged through the mud as of late.
So it was that players wanted to come back if Nick Nurse was coaching, or they did not want to come back?
No, they want to come back now that he's out.
They want to come back now that he's gone. So maybe there's a little bit at play here that he got wind of that, and he said, I'm going to do the more palatable thing and announce a digestible story. A digestible story for the media that it's career commitments, things like that. Reality, I've got wind that nobody wants to play for me at the helm of Team Canada. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one, Ben. I'm giving Nick Nurse the hall pass. But I think last 2 seasons, just seeing his demeanor, some of the things that he's saying in press conferences, the things that we're hearing about, preferring to just drag his team instead of talking to them in private. I just think he's a bit of a weird guy. He gives me odd vibes, and so I'm okay for Team Canada to not have to have Nick Nurse at that number 1 seat.
Hey, the odd vibes from Nick Nurse.
Odd vibes.
Out of the door. Old Nick Nurse. No more Nick Nursery for Andrew Wiggins and Chris Boucher out there.
He gives me Kyrie Irving saging the court before the game vibes, bring his acoustic guitar into the locker room vibes. I just don't know if that's the basketball setting that you need.
Nick Nurse is going to be in Philadelphia giving live concerts pregame. That's what's happening down there. But let me know what you guys think about all this Toronto Raptors news in the comment section below. You guys are the best for making this far. We got a lot of vids coming, lots of coverage on this Toronto Raptors team over the next few days. So definitely hit that subscribe button. Ryker, do you have any last words on all this Toronto Raptors madness?
Free agency tomorrow, Ben. It's going to get madder.
Let's go.
Cheers.